In Miami, Ferrari has first-hand experienced a deep limit of the SF-25 project. It's no longer just a matter of slow curves or setup compromises. Here we're talking about a structural error, about a car forced to give up its own potential to avoid self-destruction. Hamilton, Leclerc, and Vasseur tell three different perspectives, but all point in the same direction. The single-seater doesn't work as it should, and the reason, as technical as it is glaringly simple. Today I take you into the heart of the problem. I explain what is really happening under the hood of the Ferrari and why the Miami weekend could have marked a turning point not only for 2025 but for the entire future of the team. If you like the videos, hit like to support me and let's get started right away. During the Miami weekend, deeper weaknesses emerged than the already known difficulty in slow corners.
The car
is designed to operate within a very narrow window, as highlighted by Hamilton, and this makes it difficult to find a balance between fast and slow sections. The setup is complicated, and the lack of time for adjustments during sprint weekends further amplifies the problem. It remains to be seen whether the issues are the result of structural limitations of the project or the result of a forced technical choice to avoid worse damage. According to Hamilton, the performance drop accumulated in the last races is clear and the team knows where to intervene. The Englishman's words echo what was already said in Suzuka. Ferrari is forced to run higher than expected to avoid excessive plank wear, but loses aerodynamic efficiency. A rumor reported by Auto Racer suggests that the team is working on a modification of the rear suspension to address the problem. Currently, the SF-25 is therefore in a compromised situation with a setup that moves it away from the ideal parameters. Leclerc describes a slow and difficult to handle car, but Vasseur is also right when he talks about potential still to be unlocked, sacrificed to preserve the integrity of the bottom. At the root of the problem is a technical issue related to ground clearance control, which involves both mechanical and aerodynamic aspects. When one wonders if the simulator may have misled the project, it must be remembered that its accuracy depends on the initial data collected in separate environments. The behavior of the suspensions, for example, is studied on dynamic benches that simulate real stresses. However, the efficiency of a suspension should not be evaluated absolutely, but based on the aerodynamic loads it has to interact with. The aerodynamic data, on the other hand, comes from the wind tunnel, where the model does not have suspensions and cannot simulate the behavior of the car when it gets too close to the ground to avoid damaging the moving carpet. Jock Clear, one of the team's leading engineers, had already explained how the bottom works close to the ground, facing a particularly delicate aerodynamic challenge. For this reason, it is essential to collect real data from the track and integrate it with the information gathered in the tunnel. In recent months, Ferrari has focused its efforts on studying the behavior of the bottom near the asphalt. An experimental version introduced in Las Vegas in 2024 served just this purpose, and to facilitate the analysis, the carpet of the wind tunnel was also updated. The operation was confirmed by Vasseur himself, who highlighted the progress made in data collection and interpretation. The fundamental physical defect concerns a design pushed to the extreme to maximize the load on a ground-level car. In 2024, the main limit was represented by porpoising, while with the problem now under control, the critical factor has become the wear of the plank. When the SF-25 hit the track, the team was finally able to analyze the interaction between the new mechanical and aerodynamic components, discovering a degradation of the bottom much faster than expected. Then there is the impact of a technical directive issued by the Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile at the Las Vegas Grand Prix, introduced without notice and which clarified the illegality of some solutions to protect the metal plates from wear. This forced Ferrari to make urgent changes. Moreover, the departure of Enrico Cardile in July left a significant gap in the technical management of the SF-25, temporarily filled by Vasseur before the switch to Oichera in October. Finally, one cannot ignore the progress made by McLaren, which with the MCL39 has made a clear leap forward, helping to amplify the gap between Ferrari and the leading teams. Although the SF-25 didn't meet expectations, it helped technical director Loic Serra understand which direction to avoid when developing the 2025 single-seater. After 6 races, including that of Miami, it is now clear that the current Ferrari project has fundamental problems. This gives the team the necessary time to reflect and not repeat the same mistakes with the next generation of cars, crucial for the team's plan to return to the fight for the world title as hoped for by President John Elkann. The OXR has inherited a car that is practically already defined, and the results are significantly lower than those of the SF-24. The 2024 car, which had ended the season with 5 victories and second place among the manufacturers, seemed to have reached the peak of its development. Hence the choice to focus on a completely new project with a different body, a new pull rod front suspension, and a more compact gearbox. In practice, they wanted to reverse the behavior of the car. The SF-24 was effective in slow corners but struggled in the fast ones. The new single-seater performs better on fast sections but is less competitive in slow parts. Only minor changes are expected at Imola, while for a more substantial package we'll have to wait for Barcelona. Just in time for the Spanish Grand Prix, stricte Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile checks on the front wings will come into effect. Ferrari plans to introduce a new diffuser, updates to the floor, and a revision of the mechanical setup with the aim of stiffening the suspension and lowering the car without running into wear problems. In Maranello, they believe that the new technical checks could slow down McLaren and Mercedes, allowing Ferrari to close the gap at least against Red Bull and Mercedes, if not the leaders. The plan is to continue developing the SF-25 at least until the summer break, which will follow the Belgian Grand Prix. After the 13th race, a final decision will be made on the opportunity to shift all focus to the project.
2025.
Some small novelty might arrive in Monza or Singapore, but nothing particularly revolutionary. The spending cap already requires focusing energy and funds on next year. Unlike Ferrari, McLaren has completed its evolution and in Miami has reaped the benefits of work started a year ago. If then the English team had emerged among the best, today it has become the benchmark on the grid. Analyzing in depth the reasons for this success, it can be traced back to a precise combination of technical choices and aerodynamic optimizations that have made the MCL-39 unbeatable, especially on a track like that of Florida. In the last 2 weekends, the single-seaters have adopted medium-low load configurations. However, the layout of the circuits has changed. In Jeddah, medium-fast curves dominate, while in Miami, the stopwatch is decided in the most driven sections. Both circuits share long straights, but what made the difference was the management of the slow sections. The comparison between the two teams highlights a critical point. The McLaren proved to be particularly effective in tighter direction changes, while the Ferrari struggled. The portion of the track between turn 11 and 16 up to 17 was the stage where McLaren gained the most. On the single lap, the Woking team was not dominant in the first sector, but built its advantage in the middle and final part of the lap, thanks to excellent traction and impeccable management of the rear slip. In Jeddah, where the setups were stiffer to enhance the aerodynamic load, this advantage had reduced, but the similar weather conditions between Arabia and Miami confirmed the goodness of the McLaren technical package, especially when mechanical grip becomes decisive. Another key factor in McLaren's success was the way it managed the temperature of the tires. In Miami, the British team was able to keep the rear end in ideal conditions throughout the race. In the second stint, Verstappen tried to get closer to Piastri in the slow section, but he was still losing 0.3 per lap. Ferrari, on the other hand, suffered a gap close to 0.6, too much to aspire to a podium position. Thanks to an optimal camber recovery, McLaren was able to push even in sections where it was not theoretically favored, like the first sector. The stability of the tires and resistance to lateral stress allowed the drivers to consistently exploit the single-seater without significant drops in pace. Versatility is today the main quality of the MCL-39. It can adapt to different conditions while maintaining high performance. At Imola, for example, where the only real slow curve is the high variant, the gap between the cars could reduce, at least on paper. However, the layout of the Emilian track should still favor McLaren, even though the gap with the pursuers might be less clear than what we saw in Florida. There's a lot of talk about flexible wings ahead of the Spanish Grand Prix, with Ferrari hoping that the new technical directives can reshuffle the values on the field. However, based on past experience and the current difficulties of the SF-25, there is reason to be cautious. Whenever similar directives were implemented, the red one appeared to be the most penalized. This is compounded by structural problems that make it difficult for the team to take advantage of certain updates. With the application of the new directive, all teams will try to lower the front wing to improve the overall efficiency of the car. This effect is achieved by reducing the angle of attack of the aerodynamic profile, making the airflow more stable and generating a better distribution of loads. Some teams have already demonstrated that they have more advanced solutions to achieve this effect effectively. The risk is that Ferrari may not be able to take advantage of it. Lowering the front end results in more contact of the bottom with the asphalt, resulting in excessive wear of the plank.
An aspect
Critical for Maranello, who struggles to maintain the constant ground clearance of the SF-25. If this limit is not resolved, there is a risk that the new setup will cause more harm than good. In theory, reducing the ground clearance would improve cornering, a flaw that has been present since the beginning of the year. But in practice, Ferrari has not yet been able to successfully implement this solution. Vasseur hopes that starting from Barcelona, the gaps between the top teams will decrease. During that weekend, a new package will be introduced on the front wing specifically to adapt to the new checks on flexion. Already in the static tests, the rules are quite strict, but in motion, the teams have always looked for loopholes to achieve a certain level of deformation, especially in specific speed ranges. This attitude has greatly annoyed Tom Bazis, the Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile technical manager, who has been closely observing certain borderline solutions for years. Many teams have designed their front wings to achieve controlled flexing, wisely exploiting the structural rigidity of the component. This is not only due to the orientation of the carbon fibers, but also to the composition of the resin that binds them. The so-called matrix, in fact, can behave differently depending on the temperature, altering the flexibility of the element. We delved into this topic by speaking with a technical figure in the paddock. It emerged that the deformation of the wing can also be induced by heat, or in some cases even by chemical reactions. The key point is to understand how the temperature is increased in very specific areas of the wing to activate this flexing without exceeding the limits imposed by the Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile. One hypothesis is that some areas of the wing are designed in a way that favors a local increase in pressure and therefore temperature by exploiting the compression of the air in motion. This strategy has been noticed especially on the rear wings. However, there is a significant physical limit. Carbon fiber is a poor heat conductor, so the heat transfer to the matrix is minimal. This makes it hard to believe that airflow alone can effectively heat the wing unless auxiliary materials are used to improve heat exchange. It's clear, however, that the top teams, including Ferrari, Mercedes, Red Bull, and particularly McLaren, have invested heavily in designing completely new wings for the upcoming event in Barcelona. We'll soon discover if these changes yield the desired outcomes. Franco Colapinto is prepared to rejoin the starting grid. The young Argentine driver who made his Formula One debut in Monza the previous year will take part in the Imola Grand Prix with Alpine, temporarily replacing Jack Doohan. For Colapinto, this is a non-trivial return. Not only will it be his second debut in the top series, but this time the expectations will be much higher than the first time. When he was surprisingly announced by Williams just 8 months ago, few knew his name. The idea that he could get into an F1 seemed like a risky bet, especially since the most logical alternative seemed to be Mick Schumacher, then the third Mercedes driver. But James Vowles, the team principal of the English racing team, had bet on him also thanks to the support of Argentine sponsors. The results proved him right. 8th in Baku, 10th in Austin. Enough to increase interest in the boy, so much so that even Red Bull had inquired through Helmut Marko, followed by Alpine. The incident in Las Vegas with the track exit slightly cooled the enthusiasm, but that did not prevent Alpine from snatching him from Williams and including him in their youth program. Initially, Doohan was announced as the starter for 2025, but with the signing of Colapinto, it immediately seemed clear that a change was only a matter of time. It was thought that the transition could already take place in Miami, but in the end it will be Imola that marks the beginning of his new adventure. A track that he holds dear. It was right there in Formula 2 where he achieved his first victory. Compared to his debut last year, Colapinto starts from a base of 9 weekends of experience, but paradoxically, he will have to face greater pressure if in Monza he was a new face on which no one had expectations. Now all eyes are on him, and the contract that binds him to Alpine currently only covers 5 races, a detail that suggests how little margin for error there is. The current management of Alpine, now in the hands of Flavio Briatore, makes no secret of the fact that results must come immediately, a philosophy similar to that of Helmut Marko. Whoever gets promoted must prove their worth immediately without too many excuses. But for Colapinto, used to running on limited budgets from the start and being ready on every occasion, it's not a novelty. The opportunity he has is perhaps the most crucial of his career, the potential springboard to a stable Formula One role. Carlos Sainz is seriously considering the idea of running for the presidency of the Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile. In an exclusive interview, the former World Rally champion explained that he is undergoing a deep reflection to understand how much support he could receive from the motorsport community. The elections will be held on December 12th in Tashkent, Uzbekistan, and the current president Mohammed Ben Sulayem seems intent on running for a second term. Sainz, who had just won the Dakar 2024 with Audi, revealed that this thought has been with him for a long time, but only now has he really started to consider it. After over 40 years of career, he feels that the right time might have come to give back to the sport what he has received. His ambition does not stem from a personal desire for power, but from a sincere attachment to the environment that has shaped and welcomed him for decades. He believes he can offer new ideas and a serious, concrete approach based on direct experience, gained in every corner of the motorsport world. If you like the video, hit like, subscribe, and activate the bell so you don't miss the next ones. Let me know what you think in the comments, and see you next time.